right, welcome to our lesson video for Unit 1, Day 4, or Day 1.4 as we're calling it. Today we're talking about segment and angle bisector. We're going to talk about what that word bisector means in this first part of the video. So please make sure you are following along. If you need to pause at any moment to get caught up, go ahead and do so. But first, we're going to talk about this word, midpoint. And it makes sense that the midpoint, it's just spelled like this, of a segment is in the middle. But we want to focus on what that does to the segment. So a midpoint of a segment is a point that divides the segment into two congruent segments. Okay? So this point would be our midpoint. Okay. A line, array, or a segment that intersects a segment at its midpoint is said to bisect. The word bisect means to divide into two congruent segments also. The segment, and is called the segment bisector. Okay? So in this diagram to the left, B is the midpoint of AC, which is a segment. A line cannot have a midpoint because a line doesn't have length, but a segment can have a midpoint. And line L, that's what this line is here, is a segment bisector. Of segment AC. Okay, and since we have these congruent segments now, AB and BC, okay, we can say that segment AB is now congruent to segment BC. But we could also talk about some other concepts here. From the last lesson, we talked about segment addition postulate, and that anytime a point is in the middle, not necessarily in the middle, but is between two other endpoints of a segment, we can get this kind of equation. We know that AB plus BC equals AC. Well, since AB and BC are the same, I could say that AB equals BC. So by a little bit of reworking, instead of saying AB plus BC, I could just say 2 times AB is also equal to AC. So we can manipulate the equation a little bit to get those ideas. And any of these equations could help us in problem solving. So let's take a look at some of our examples. Okay? In order to use this kind of relationship, that these are equal and you can set them equal to each other, you need to be given this key word, midpoint. You need that word to be able to set up equations. Because Q is the midpoint of PR, I know these are congruent segments, and that means that I can say 7x minus 16 equals 4x plus 12. And then we can solve that equation for x to answer our question. And so we subtract 4x from both sides. 7x minus 4x is 3x. And I add 16 to both sides, and 12 plus 16 is 28. I'm sorry, that's not a 12. I knew I was doing something wrong because that wouldn't have worked. That's just a 2. So we're going to add 16 to 2 and just get 18. See, even I make mistakes sometimes. It's okay. If you ever catch me making a mistake in a video that I don't catch, feel free to come and talk to me about it in class and we'll get it fixed. So now 3x equals 18, and we divide by 3 on both sides, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. Okay, for example 2, we're really going to do this pretty much the same way that we've just done the other one, but it's setting up a little bit different set for us. R is still the midpoint, that's still our key word, and this is called 2x plus 16. We're just filling in these segment lengths with algebraic expressions. 2x plus 16 will equal some value, and then RS is 5x minus 17. But since this is our midpoint, we know these are congruent segments, so these are equal. But the task for us here is to find QS, not just find X. So what we want to do in this is first go through just like we did and find the value of X, but then our last step is to just plug in x for one of these equations to find QS. And I want the whole thing. So I could plug it in twice and then add the results. But any time you plug it into one of these, if I was the midpoint, this length gets to be doubled like we had up here. So what I want you to do is pause the video and solve this equation. Okay, pause the video and solve for x. And this is what we should get for x if you've paused the video. If you need more time, pause again. But once you get an answer for x, like I'm about to show you, then I'm going to show you the next step. Okay, we get x equals 11. But that's not our final answer. They want us to find the value of QS. And since x is 11, I can take 2 times 11 and then add 16 to that, and I will get QR. And then QS is just equal to 2 times QR. So once I plug in for QR, I can double it, and that will be my answer. So we're going to do 2 times 11, which is 22. But then I have to add that 16 still. And 22 plus 16 is 38. So QR is equal to 38. But they ask for QS. Well, this would be 38, and this would also be 38. If you're not sure about that, plug in 11 here, and then you should also get 38. And then if I do 2 times 38, I get 76. And that is my answer. So sometimes you have to go ahead and do more than just solve for x. Sometimes you have to plug back in. Make sure you identify what it is you're trying to do. So we're going to do some more of this together, and we are going to do more of the notes in class. So we're going to actually put a star next to this one, number 3. We'll do that one in class together. I'm going to skip over that one for our video purposes. But I want us to look at number 4 now. On some of these examples, you will not have pictures given to you. I've given you these first 3 examples with a picture in the diagram, but sometimes I don't give that. And so this phrase at the bottom is very, very important. Okay, draw a picture to help problem solve through this problem. And it'll say that one on the next example also. And so we're going to take a look at this one by drawing our segment first. So it says to find the length of segment AB if C is the midpoint of AB. Well, this sentence, or that part of the sentence, tells me how to draw my picture. C is the midpoint of AB, so I'm just going to draw a segment, calling the endpoints A and B, and I'm going to do my best to put C exactly in the middle. I'm going to mark them as congruent. So C is the midpoint of AB. And then I can fill in, just like they did here, with the appropriate labels. AB itself, the entire thing, is 7x minus 24, not AC or CB. Okay? Make sure you set this up according to that statement, otherwise your diagram is going to be wrong. So AB is 7x minus 24, so I'm going to show that this way. I'm going to make a little marking down here to show the entire thing is 7x minus 24. And then it says BC is 2x, and so I'm going to go up here to the BC part of this and just put a 2x. And we need to find the length of AB in total. And it looks like we're missing some of the information. However, since this is the midpoint, if AB is called 2x, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the camera there. If AB is, not 2x, if AB is 7x minus 24, and BC is 2x, then AC is also 2x. I can call both of those 2x, because they're congruent to each other, since C is the midpoint. So now I can set up my equation that 2x plus 2x, or 2x times 2, like that. I can either say 2x plus 2x or 2x times 2 is equal to my total. Remember, we talked about part plus part equals whole in the previous lesson. So we can say 2x plus 2x, or 2x times 2, equals the whole thing, 7x minus 24. And 2x plus 2x, or 2x times 2, either way you put that, you get 4x. And now we have to solve this equation. Now I want you to remember your algebra skills here. When solving this equation, I can't just subtract the 4x and leave nothing over there. We could do that, but anytime we do that, it would cancel everything out on one side. That leaves a fairly unbalanced equation. I don't want to do that. So instead, I'm going to subtract the 7x from both sides. And it will give me a negative value here, but that's okay. 4x minus 7x is negative 3x. And here I have negative 24. Well, the two negatives will cancel when we divide. So if I do negative 24 divided by negative 3, I get that x equals positive 8. And we're told to find the length of AB. Now, remember, I could plug it in for the 7x minus 24, or I could plug it in for the 2x and double it, and that might be a little bit easier. If x is 8, 2 times 8 is 16. Well, both sides here would be, 16. And 16 plus 16 for the total length of AB would be 32. Okay? So we are going to do some problems like that. We are going to go ahead and skip number 5 for now. We will do that one in class also, put a little star next to it. We want to go to the back so we can talk about angles also. Okay, we want to talk about what an angle bisector is, just like we had segment bisectors. Okay? An angle bisector is a ray, it could be a ray, a line, or a segment, but in this case a ray that divides an angle into two congruent angles, just like segment bisector, but for angles now. So this angle and this angle are the same or equal to each other because this is an angle bisector. In the diagram to the right, ray BD is an angle bisector. Therefore, angle ABD is congruent to angle DBC. Okay, we also want to talk about what a perpendicular bisector is. A perpendicular bisector is a line, a segment, or a ray perpendicular to a segment at its midpoint. So it's just perpendicular and it's a bisector. Okay, it's pretty self-explanatory. In the diagram to the right, line LM is the perpendicular bisector of segment PQ. Okay? And so we're going to do one of these examples to be able to do this. I'm sorry about the print. It is very, very small. Some of these we are going to do in class because they're really hard to see in the video. But we're going to do example 7. So if you want to put a star next to 6, we'll do number 7 right now. We are told in this to use this diagram for 6 and 7. And they tell you that BX is a bisector of ray ABC. So I know these two angles are congruent. I can put little markings like that. Even though the diagram's on 6, we're going to use it for number 7. So in this, we were told the measure of ABC, that entire whole thing, is 4x minus 12. But the measure of ABX is 24. Well, remember that these are congruent pieces of the whole thing, so it's like each of these individual angles are half of that whole. So we can find the value of x by doing that. If both of these are 24, okay, I could write that as a 24 plus a 24 for the two parts. Part plus part equals the whole thing of 4x minus 12. And now we just solve the equation. 24 plus 24 is 48. Add 12 to both sides. And we have 4x on one side, the other side. 48 plus 12 is 60. Divide by 4, and x is 15. Okay, now that we have talked about angle bisectors and all of those, we are going to do some more of these examples in class. This lesson has a lot of examples we don't have time to cover in the video, but make sure you bring your notes with you, and we will get some class time to go over these and finish some of these examples.